While you slept, your tax dollars weren't fixing potholes. They were funding America's endless wars. From Ukraine to Gaza, US money fuels bombs, not bridges. Meanwhile, China is building ports, railways, and digital networks. Especially in Africa, the US clings to military might, but China invests in infrastructure, shaping the future. America's focus on conflict leaves its own roads crumbling, while China lays the groundwork for the next global boom. The real contest isn't about who has the biggest military, it's about who's building the future. As US taxpayers fund distant wars, China pours concrete across Africa, connecting economies and people. The scoreboard, China's lead grows daily, not with firepower, but with cranes and blueprints. The US is losing ground, not in battle, but in the race to build and invest. The world's next superpower may be decided by construction, not conflict. China is waging a war in Africa, a war of influence, not arms. While Washington throws tariffs, Beijing signs billion-dollar deals for roads, ports, and digital networks. China's approach is simple. Show up with a checkbook and a construction crew, not lectures. African nations, tired of Western strings, find China's offer hard to refuse. The US is distracted by old rivalries, missing Africa's real needs and opportunities. China is becoming Africa's indispensable partner, project by project. The nation that builds Africa's infrastructure will control resources, markets, and trade routes. America's focus is elsewhere, but the real contest is in Africa's mines, ports, and tech hubs. China is winning decisively while the US isn't even close. The future is being built, and China holds the blueprints. The West sees Africa as a charity case, but that's outdated and dangerous. Africa is the engine room of the 21st century, home to vast arable land and untapped mineral wealth. The future of food, tech, and industry is being shaped in places like Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Zambia. Africa holds the minerals, cobalt, lithium, platinum, that power our digital and green revolutions. Whoever secures these resources controls the global supply chain. China understands Africa's strategic value and is investing accordingly. The US is stuck in a Cold War mindset, missing Africa's economic potential. The real story isn't about charity, it's about who will partner with Africa to shape the future. China is building, while America looks for enemies. The continent's future is up for grabs, and China is already at work. The next global boom starts in Africa. Africa's greatest asset isn't just land or minerals, it's people. With a median age of 19, Africa's population will double by 2050, becoming the world's largest workforce. The next generation of consumers, innovators, and entrepreneurs will be African. China is investing in digital impacts infrastructure, universities, and training centers to connect with this youth. The US still offers military aid and lectures. China offers scholarships and 5G networks. The companies that serve Africa's young, connected population will dominate the 21st century economy. China is building relationships for the future, while the US is stuck in the past. The race is for Africa's hearts, minds, and markets. And China is playing to win. America plays checkers, China plays Go, controlling the map. The future belongs to those who invest in Africa's people. While US politicians debate sanctions, China builds Africa's future, one project at a time. In Kenya, China built the $5 billion standard gauge railway, transforming East Africa's transport. In Nigeria, China funded the Lekki deep sea port, set to dominate West African trade. In Djibouti, while the US maintained a military base, China built ports, railways, and its own base next door. China's strategy, economic opportunity, not just military presence. Across Angola, Ethiopia, and beyond, China's signature is on roads, hospitals, and even the African Union headquarters. Each project cements China's influence, offering visible progress where the US offers lectures and loans with strings. China is winning Africa not with words, but with results people can see and use. The US is outmaneuvered, not by force, but by building what matters. China's infrastructure is the foundation of its growing power. The continent's future is being shaped by Chinese cranes, not American speeches. The evidence is everywhere. Africa is being built by China. China's strategy goes beyond concrete. It's about controlling Africa's resources and digital future. In the DRC, China controls most cobalt mines, essential for batteries and green tech. Western tech giants now depend on Chinese-controlled African minerals. Its economic checkmate, China owns the supply chain. China is also building Africa's digital backbone 5G networks, data centers, and undersea cables. Huawei leads, offering affordable, high-quality tech that African nations can't refuse. China sets these technical standards, weaving Africa into its economic orbit. The U.S. responds with warnings and complicated loans. China offers the future. Across Africa, leaders and citizens are choosing China's business. In the next wave, gaming the AI, green energy, the digital infrastructure is already in China's pipeline. The U.S. is selling fear. China is selling progress, and Africa is buying. There's a simple reason why China is running circles around the United States in Africa. It's because China doesn't preach, it builds. When Chinese officials arrive in an African capital, they don't bring a dusty old textbook on Jeffersonian democracy or a long, condescending lecture about human rights. They bring blueprints, engineering teams, and a very large checkbook. They ask a simple question: what do you need built? For African leaders who are desperate to deliver tangible progress to their citizens, roads, power, plants, hospitals, and internet connectivity, this approach is a breath of fresh air. They've had enough of being treated like disobedient pupils by their former colonial masters. China treats them like customers, and the customer is always right. This no-strings-attached policy is China's killer app. Of course, we all know there are strings. The deals often favor Chinese labor, create significant debt, and lack transparency. But compared to the alternative offered by the West, they feel like freedom. The US and Europe offer aid packages wrapped in a thick layer of political conditionality. To get a loan, a country might have to restructure its entire economy based on IMF demands, face endless audits, and publicly align with US foreign policy goals. China, on the other hand, focuses on one thing: business. They operate on a principle of non-interference in domestic politics. They will happily build a 6-lane highway for a dictator or a Democrat as long as the deal gets signed. This pragmatism is the core of their global strategy, known as the Belt and Road Initiative, a jaw-dropping trillion-dollar plan to build infrastructure and connect the world to China. Africa is a crown jewel of this initiative. The strategy is straightforward: fund and build the essential infrastructure that African nations need to grow. In return, China secures access to resources, opens up new markets for its goods, and locks in diplomatic allies for decades to come. It's a patient, long-term vision that is transforming the geopolitical map. While the US is busy trying to contain China with military alliances, China is simply building a new world order around the US. Another key to their success is speed. When China promises a project, they deliver it with breathtaking efficiency. A new airport terminal, a major bridge, or a national fiber optic network can go from a handshake deal to a ribbon-cutting ceremony in just a few years. A timeline that is unthinkable for most Western-backed projects, which often get bogged down in bureaucracy, environmental reviews, and political debates. For African citizens, the difference is stark. They see China as a partner that gets things done, a nation that delivers on its promises. The US promises democracy. China delivers a power grid that keeps the lights on. It's not hard to see which one wins more hearts and minds. Now let's flip the coin and look at the American strategy, if you can even call it that. The US approach to Africa seems stuck in a time warp, a relic of the Cold War era. Instead of seeing a continent of 1.4 billion potential partners, Washington sees a collection of security threats and strategic liabilities. The primary tools in its toolbox are not construction cranes and investment funds, but drone bases, counterterrorism operations, and military training programs. The US, in this, isn't building Africa's future. It's fighting endless proxy wars on its soil, from the Sahel to Somalia. This is a strategy designed to manage problems, not to build opportunities. It's a reactive, defensive crutch, while China is playing offense. Where China offers infrastructure, the US offers something far more sinister: debt traps dressed up as freedom packages. Loans from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, both heavily influenced by the US, come with crippling austerity measures. They force governments to cut public spending on healthcare and education, privatize state assets, and slash subsidies that the poor rely on. This isn't a path to prosperity, it's a recipe for social unrest and economic stagnation. It's a model that extracts wealth and imposes control, all under the guise of fiscal responsibility. African nations are increasingly seeing these deals for what they are: a neo-colonial tool to keep them dependent and weak. And let's talk about the hypocrisy. The US government lectures African nations about debt and governance, while its own national debt spirals past $34 trillion and its own infrastructure crumbles. Have you seen the state of the roads in Detroit? Have you heard about the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, which remains unresolved after a decade? American taxpayers are funding the defense of borders in Ukraine and Taiwan, while their own bridges and water systems are rated D+. The US government has an endless budget for the Pentagon, but it can't seem to find the money to provide clean water to its own citizens. This glaring double standard is not lost on African leaders or their people. This is why the US is losing. Its strategy is built on a foundation of military intervention, political lecturing, and economic exploitation. It is a strategy that talks down to Africa rather than listening to it. The US sees a continent of problems to be solved with drone strikes and stern warnings. China sees a continent of partners to be cultivated with ports, railways, and 5G networks. In the great contest for influence in the 21st century's most important continent, one superpower is offering a vision of shared prosperity, however flawed. The other is offering more of the same tired, failed policies of the past. It's not a fair fight.
I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of...
Let's bring this story home, right to your wallet. Every year, American taxpayers pour hundreds of billions of dollars into the US government. And where does that money go? Is it paving the potholed streets in your neighborhood? Is it replacing the lead pipes that poison the water in cities like Flint and Jackson? Is it building a high-speed rail system to compete with the rest of the developed world? The answer is a resounding and frankly insulting no. Instead, your hard-earned money is being shipped overseas to fuel foreign wars and prop up military alliances that have little to do with your daily safety. You are paying for bombs in Yemen, tanks in Ukraine, and missile defense systems for allies who are perfectly capable of defending themselves. It's a bitter pill to swallow. While your local school is holding bake sales to afford new textbooks, the Pentagon is spending billions on a fighter jet program that barely works. While your hospitals are understaffed and overwhelmed, your tax dollars are funding the indefinite stationing of troops in dozens of countries. The political class in Washington, D.C. tells you this is the price of global leadership. But it feels a lot more like the price of global negligence, especially when you look at the state of America itself. The American Society of Civil Engineers gives U.S. infrastructure a C- grade. That's not leadership, that's a national embarrassment funded by the very people it fails. Meanwhile, as you foot the bill for America's endless military adventures, China is putting on a masterclass in how a superpower should invest its capital. They are using their money to build things, not blow them up. They are constructing gleaming new shopping malls in Lusaka, Zambia, creating jobs and consumer choice. They are laying down 5G networks in Kigali, Rwanda, leapfrogging the West, and building the digital infrastructure for Africa's future. They are funding the tech incubators in Johannesburg, where the next generation of African programmers and entrepreneurs are coding the continent's destiny. China is investing in brains, commerce, and the future. This contrast is what makes the situation so utterly humiliating for the American taxpayer. You are being forced to subsidize a foreign policy that is actively making your own country poorer and less competitive. The government is taking your money and using it to play world police, while your direct competitor is using its money to become the world's landlord, factory owner, and banker. You are paying for the conflicts of the 20th century while China is building the economic empire of the 21st. It's a raw deal, a strategic blunder of historic proportions, and you are the one signing the checks for it. The embarrassment doesn't just stop at crumbling infrastructure and neglected communities at home. It extends to America's diminishing reputation on the world stage. The current US strategy makes the nation look like a confused and aging empire, obsessed with military dominance while completely missing the economic game that will define this century. How does it look to the rest of the world when the US lectures other nations about fiscal responsibility while its own debt skyrockets to fund foreign wars? How does it look when the US sanctions countries for using Chinese technology while American companies become utterly dependent on Chinese supply chains for their own products? It looks weak, hypocritical, and strategically incoherent. This isn't just a perception. It's a reality that other countries, especially in Africa, see with perfect clarity. They see a United States that offers warnings, threats, and military exercises. Then they see a China that arrives with blueprints, construction equipment, and investment capital. Who would you rather partner with? The nation that wants to build a drone base on your land, or the one that wants to build a university? The nation that offers a lecture, or the one that offers a power plant? The choice is becoming painfully obvious, and with every new Chinese-built project, America's influence shrinks. US taxpayers are funding a foreign policy that is actively pushing potential allies into the arms of its main rival. Think about the sheer irony of it all. Your tax dollars are spent defending the borders of Taiwan and Ukraine, supposedly to protect democracy and freedom. Yet, this focus on distant conflicts means the US is forfeiting the race for the continent that represents the future of the global population and economy. You are paying to contain China in the South China Sea, while China is winning the game in the mines of the Congo and the ports of Nigeria. It's like meticulously guarding your front door while a burglar empties your entire house through the back window. The world is watching this unfold, and they are not impressed. They are bewildered by America's priorities. Ultimately, the deepest embarrassment is the squandered potential. American taxpayers are funding the decline of their own nation's global standing. You are paying for an approach that prioritizes bombs over brains, conflict over construction, and yesterday's battles over tomorrow's opportunities. Your money is being used to make the world more dangerous and America less prosperous. It's a tragic self-own on a global scale. While China builds the future in Africa, you are stuck paying the bill for a past that America simply can't let go of, becoming a financial enabler for your own country's slow slide into irrelevance. The race for Africa is heating up, and this next phase is no longer just about securing minerals or building ports. This is a battle for the future itself, and the grand prize is the loyalty and talent of the world's youngest population. Let's look at the numbers. because they tell a story that should keep strategists in Washington awake at night. Projections show that by the year 2030, a staggering 42% of all global youth will be African. Let that sink in. Nearly half of the world's young people, the future scientists, engineers, consumers, and leaders, will live on this one continent. This demographic explosion is the single most powerful force that will shape the 21st century. This is not just about population growth, it's about the creation of the largest labor force the world has ever seen. As other continents grapple with aging populations and shrinking workforces, Africa will become the planet's primary engine of human capital. The innovation, the creativity, and the economic energy that once defined Europe and America will increasingly be found in cities like Accra, Dakar, and Addis Ababa. The superpower that successfully partners with this generation will not just have an economic advantage, it will be aligned with the very pulse of humanity's future. The real battlefield isn't in the South China Sea, it's in the classrooms and tech hubs of Africa. This demographic shift changes all the rules of global power. For centuries, power was defined by colonial holdings, then by military might and nuclear arsenals. In the 21st century, true power will be defined by who can harness this incredible wave of human potential. The question is no longer who can build the most advanced fighter jet, but who can build the best universities. It's not about who has the most aircraft carriers, but who can provide the fastest and most affordable internet to 1 billion young minds eager to learn, create, and connect with the world. This is a race for hearts and minds, and it will be won with opportunity, not with intimidation. Control Africa's trade and you influence global commerce. Control Africa's resources and you influence global industry, but win the allegiance of Africa's youth and you shape the entire future of the planet. This is what is truly at stake. It's a fundamental competition of ideas and models for development. Will this generation look to the West with its history of colonialism and its current model of lectures and military bases? Or will they look to the East, to a power that, for all its faults, is showing up with investment, technology, and a narrative of partnership? The answer to that question will determine the global balance of power for the next 100 years. As this superpower race intensifies, African nations are faced with a stark choice between two fundamentally different proposals for their future. On one side, you have China. Beijing's offer is framed as a partnership of equals, a win-win collaboration. They come to the table with a model that says, let us help you build the infrastructure you need to unlock your own potential. In return, we get access to your markets and resources, and you get the roads, ports, and power plants you need to grow. This is the language of commerce and mutual interest. China's message is clear. We want to be your partner in prosperity, a co-author of your success story. On the other side, you have the United States. America's offer, whether stated explicitly or not, is one of dominance. It is rooted in the belief that the US must remain the world's sole superpower, the leader of a rules-based order that it alone defines and enforces. Its engagement in Africa is therefore primarily seen through a security lens. The US wants military access, strategic alignment against its rivals, and adherence to its political and economic ideologies. The relationship it offers is not one of a partner, but of a patron, not of a builder, but of a protector. The underlying message is one of dependency. You need our protection, so you must play by our rules. This divergence in approach is becoming more pronounced every day. China is investing in Africa's economic integration, building the very networks that will allow African nations to trade more easily with each other and the world. The US, meanwhile, is investing in military commands like AFRICOM, focused on containing threats and maintaining a security foothold. One superpower is building markets, the other is building bases. One is focused on the economic opportunities of tomorrow, while the other remains fixated on the security threats of yesterday. For African nations, the choice is between a partner focused on their economic development and a patron focused on its own geopolitical agenda. The real question is, who will ultimately win the minds of the next African generation? Will it be the superpower that offers a hand up or the one that offers a lecture? As one young African tech entrepreneur put it, their generation is looking for collaborators, not saviors. They don't want to be pawns in a new Cold War. They want to build their own future on their own continent. A poignant clip from a recent interview captures this sentiment perfectly. Where a young girl in a coding camp says, "I want to work in tech in Africa, not America." This is the new reality. The superpower that understands and respects this aspiration is the one that will win the future. As the titans of East and West circle the continent, the real power lies not in Washington or Beijing, but in the hands of African leaders themselves. This is not a football match where you can simply pick a side and cheer. This is a high-stakes negotiation for the very soul of the continent's future. And playing the victim is not an option. This is a moment that calls for shrewd, clear-eyed leadership that can play these competing powers off against each other for Africa's own benefit. The first rule is simple. Negotiate for mutual benefit, not for a new form of colonial dependency. Every deal, whether for a port or a power plant, must be scrutinized not for the short-term cash injection, but for its long-term impact on African sovereignty, jobs, and industrial growth. It's time to stop accepting scraps and start demanding a seat at the head of the table. This means building local capacity must be the non-negotiable core of every single agreement. It is not enough to get a new railway. Leaders must demand that their own people are trained to build, maintain, and manage it. It is not enough to have foreign companies extract minerals. Leaders must insist on the development of local processing and manufacturing plants, moving Africa up the value chain. The goal should be to build skills and technology at home, not to accumulate mountains of debt for projects that primarily benefit foreign corporations. This requires demanding absolute transparency from both China and the US, opening the books on every loan and every contract so that citizens know exactly what is being traded away in their name. Furthermore, African leaders must slam the door on the old geopolitical games. This means saying a firm no to the use of foreign military bases as leverage. A nation's soil should not be a bargaining chip. The security of a nation should come from its economic strength and the well-being of its people, not from hosting the armies of foreign powers who are pursuing their own rivalries. True strength lies in unity and a shared vision for a self-reliant continent. Leaders must empower their own youth economies, funding the innovation hubs and startups that are already bubbling with Africa's brightest minds. This is where the continent's real power is waiting to be unleashed. Ultimately, the choice for every African leader is stark and historic. They can be the generation that sold off the continent's future to the highest bidder, leaving their children with debt and dependency. Or they can be the generation that skillfully navigated the treacherous waters of superpower competition to build a powerful, prosperous, and independent Africa. This is the moment to stop being a prize to be won and to start being a power to be reckoned with. The message must be clear to both the US and China. Africa is not for sale. It is ready to be built by and for Africans. In the grand and noisy spectacle of the 21st century superpower race, it is easy to get lost in the headlines. We see the United States, the aging champion, spending its fortune on military might, funding distant wars while its own foundations crack. We see China the ambitious challenger pouring concrete and laying fiber optic cables, building a new economic empire with breathtaking speed and precision. The world watches, placing bets on who will come out on top. Will the bomber outlast the builder? Will the old order of dominance give way to a new one of partnership, however self-serving? It is a compelling drama full of intrigue, strategy, and immense consequence for the global balance of power. But to focus only on Washington and Beijing is to miss the entire point. The ultimate winner of this contest will not be the United States. It will not be China. The true victor, the ultimate prize, and the final arbiter of this race, be the African child. The future belongs to the young girl in a coding class in Kigali, the aspiring engineer in Lagos, the budding entrepreneur in Nairobi. Their energy, their ambition, and their sheer numbers represent the most powerful force on the planet. They are the ones who will inherit the ports, the railways, the 5G networks, and the political alliances being forged today. They will decide which partnerships were beneficial and which were exploitative. However, this victory is not guaranteed. It is conditional. It hinges entirely on the choices made right now by a generation of African leaders. If they choose the easy path, if they sell off their continent's birthright for short-term gains and personal enrichment, they will condemn that child to a future of neo-colonial debt and dependency. They will have traded sovereignty for trinkets, leaving the next generation with nothing but the bill. In this scenario, the African child does not win. They become a permanent pawn in a game played by others, their potential squandered by the short-sightedness of their elders. But if leaders make the right call, if they negotiate with wisdom, demand transparency, and prioritize the building of their own people's skills and industries, then the outcome is entirely different. If they choose to build their continent rather than sell it, they will empower that child to seize their own destiny. They will create a future where Africa is not just a battleground for superpowers, but a superpower in its own right. The winner of this global race then is the African child who is given the tools, the infrastructure, and the freedom to build a prosperous, independent future for themselves on their own terms. That is the only victory that truly matters.